Before the Book of Enoch was banned from most biblical canons, there was a chapter so disturbing that even ancient scribes refused to copy it in public. Hidden in caves, whispered only among the most trusted elders, it contained a prophecy that shook the foundations of faith. It did not just speak of judgment, it named a being, one whose arrival would mark the end of all things. The ancients feared that even mentioning this name could unleash its power, and so this chapter was cut out, sealed, away, and declared too dangerous for the common believer to ever hear. Why would a single chapter inspire such terror? What kind of prophecy could make the elders believe that erasing it was the only way to protect humanity? The answer lies not only in its words, but in the weight they carried. Words said to have been dictated to Enoch by an angel who had seen the end firsthand. It was a vision of the last days, of chaos and fire. But more than that, it was a record of the one who would stand at the center of it all. A figure not described as Satan, nor as the Antichrist, but as something far older and far more dangerous. Scholars who stumbled upon fragments of this chapter in later centuries could barely believe what they read. The lines spoke of a cosmic trial, a final battle in the heavens, and a verdict pronounced upon creation itself. And then, in the final section, the name. Written in characters so old that their meaning had to be pieced together from half-forgotten languages, it stood there, unblinking, unmoving, a name that the prophecy claimed would bring the very sky crashing down. The few who dared to speak it claimed they felt the air grow heavy, as if the earth itself resisted the sound. If this truth burns in your heart, like it burned in the hearts of those who first heard it, do not let it pass by. Like the ancients, we seek what was hidden, but unlike them, we are willing to face the cost of knowing. And before we go further into what this forbidden chapter reveals, make sure you are part of this journey. Like, subscribe, and activate the bell. Becoming a channel member helps us bring more of these powerful revelations to light. Now, let us step into the shadows of the text they tried to erase. The chapter begins in a way that seems almost innocent, describing a vision Enoch received while standing beneath a sky that burned with colors no human eyes had seen. But quickly, the tone shifts. He speaks of a rift opening in the heavens, and from it voices not of angels or men, but of something older, echoing like the roar of oceans before the first dawn. These voices did not sing hymns of praise. They spoke a verdict, that time itself was nearing its appointed end, and that one would be chosen to carry out the final act. Enoch writes that this chosen one was hidden in the hollow of creation since before the stars were lit. Neither God's enemies nor his loyal angels knew the full truth of this being's origin. Some ancient rabbis, interpreting the fragments, suggested that this figure was not created in the same way as the angels or mankind, but rather extracted from the will of God itself, a being whose very existence was tied to the act of judgment. In this, the prophecy becomes terrifying. Such a being could not be persuaded, bribed, or swayed. It would fulfill its role without mercy. One verse, partially preserved in a scroll found near Qumran, reads, "And I saw the sealbearer, whose countenance none can behold, and whose voice carries the decree of the Most High." The sealbearer became a term whispered in later apocryphal writings, associated with the moment when the heavens would fold like a scroll. This is where the text turns ominous, because Enoch does not only describe the seal-bearer's role, but hints that the moment this name is spoken aloud in the appointed time, the chain of final events will begin. It is at this point that most surviving copies of the Book of Enoch simply end. The passage, either through missing parchment or deliberate omission, but in a rare Ethiopian manuscript, partially scorched and brittle with age, the next lines appear. They speak of a name carved in fire that cannot be held in the mouth of the unworthy. And it is here that the prophecy begins to narrow toward the final, forbidden revelation, the name itself. The manuscript describes Enoch's struggle to even write the letters. It claims his hands grew heavy and the reed pen trembled as, though resisting the task, he writes that an angel stood beside him, warning, "To write is to bind, to speak is to release." This warning was clear. The name carried not just symbolic meaning, but actual power, a key to a chain of events that could not be reversed once spoken. Enoch, in obedience, covered the writing with a seal of clay, which only the appointed generation would be allowed to break. Centuries later, when scribes copied the Book of Enoch for preservation, they faced a dilemma. Should the chapter be included, knowing that the letters themselves could carry the weight of prophecy? Many refused, fearing not only the words, but the consequences of curiosity. Others, more daring, attempted to transcribe the name in coded form, scattering its letters across unrelated verses so that only the most determined scholar could reconstruct it. It is from these scattered clues that modern researchers believe they have glimpsed the forbidden identity. But what stands out most in this chapter is the description of the days that follow the name's revelation. Enoch foresaw the heavens themselves convulsing, stars abandoning their courses, the seas roaring without wind, and the foundations of the earth trembling as though alive. Yet he notes something stranger. The seal-bearer would not arrive with armies or fire at first. Instead, the being would appear in a form so unassuming that the world would not recognize it until the appointed sign was given. The ancient commentary warns that this is why the prophecy is so dangerous. If the name is spoken too soon, the seal-bearer would be forced to act before the world was ready, bringing the end not at the appointed time, but in chaos. And so, for generation after generation, the name remained hidden, sealed by fire, buried in caves, and guarded by those who believed ignorance was humanity's only shield. Some of the most intriguing fragments of this prophecy come from later writings attributed to early desert monks, who claim to have found portions of the missing chapter carved into the walls of hidden sanctuaries. These carvings were said to glow faintly in moonlight, as though the stone itself resisted the passing of centuries. The monks recorded what they could, but even they omitted the final sequence of characters, fearing that reproducing the name in full would defy God's own timing. One monk, known only as Brother Leontius, left behind a chilling account in his journal. He wrote that, while meditating on the carved words, he began to hear a low hum, like the breathing of the earth. His oil lamp flickered, and in the darkness he claimed to see the shadow of a figure standing in the archway. It did not move, it did not speak, yet he felt as though his thoughts were being read. When the shadow vanished, he discovered that one letter of the inscription had crumbled into dust, as if deliberately erased. Modern biblical scholars studying these accounts have debated whether the name is truly a literal word or a symbolic code for a greater truth. Some argue that it could be an ancient designation for the Messiah, concealed to prevent its misuse. Others believe it refers to a cosmic force or entity entirely separate from the Messiah, something more akin to an executioner of divine law whose existence is only tolerated until the final hour of judgment. Enoch's own words, however, make little room for symbolic interpretation. He writes that he heard the heavens pronounce the sound, and that the vibration of the name shook the pillars of the sky. This was no metaphor to him. It was the living utterance of a being whose arrival would close the story of humanity. And this, perhaps, is why the chapter was silenced, not because it was false, but because it might be true. The effort to piece together the forbidden name has been a slow and dangerous pursuit. From Ethiopia to the Dead Sea caves, from the libraries of Constantinople to remote Himalayan monasteries, researchers have found fragments of the same riddle. Each discovery adds a single letter or syllable, but never the whole. It is as if the ancient scribes designed the hunt to be impossible without risking divine wrath. Some clues appear hidden in acrostics within unrelated psalms, others in the margins of weathered manuscripts where ink has long since faded to a faint shadow. One such fragment, preserved in the Ge'ez language, speaks of the one whose name is not spoken among angels, for even they bow in silence. This suggests that the name is not merely sacred, but forbidden even in the higher realms. In the same manuscript, a note from an unknown scribe adds, "To say it is to summon his gaze, and his gaze is the end of all flesh." Whether this was theological embellishment or a direct quotation from Enoch's vision, it only deepens the sense of dread surrounding the mystery. Legends grew around the name's power. In medieval Europe, traveling storytellers whispered of a monk who accidentally discovered the correct pronunciation while copying ancient prayers. The tale claims the monk died within 3 days, his face frozen in an expression of awe and terror. The abbey where this occurred supposedly sealed its chapel, and the door remains bricked up to this day. While historians dismiss such stories as myth, the persistence of these accounts suggests that the fear of the name has survived for centuries. Still, a question lingers. If the name is meant to remain hidden, why did Enoch write it at all? Some believe it was an act of obedience to the angel's command, ensuring the prophecy would exist for the appointed generation. Others think Enoch himself did not know when or how it would be revealed, only that one day the seal-bearer would rise and the name would be recognized, not through study or decoding, but through an undeniable event that would mark the beginning of the end. According to the forbidden chapter, the moment the name is revealed will not be marked by a trumpet blasts or fire from the heavens, but by a strange stillness. Enoch describes it as the pause before the first lightning of the final storm. The sun will shine, the wind will blow, and life will appear normal. Yet in the unseen realms, every angel and every dark spirit will turn their gaze toward the same point on earth. It is in that moment, the text says, that history will split into 2 paths, one that continues for a brief season and one that descends into irreversible judgment. The prophecy speaks of signs that will precede the utterance of the name. Among them, rivers that run backward, a star that moves against its appointed course, and a shadow that covers the moon without any eclipse. Enoch warns that these signs will be ignored by the majority, dismissed as natural anomalies or strange coincidences. But those who know the ancient writings will recognize them for what they are. The final warnings before the seal-bearer steps forward. What makes this prophecy even more unsettling is that Enoch claims the seal-bearer will not come from the heavenly realms at the moment of revelation. Instead, he will already be among humanity, walking unnoticed, perhaps even unaware of his true identity until the appointed time. This concept has fueled endless speculation among theologians and mystics alike. Could the one destined to end the world be alive now, hidden in plain sight, waiting only for the sound of his own name? If this is true, then the danger of the forbidden name becomes obvious. To speak it in the right moment, under the right conditions, would awaken something that has slept since before creation. And once awake, the prophecy makes clear, the seal-bearer cannot be stopped, not by angels, not by men, not even by the forces of darkness themselves. His task will be singular, his judgment final, and the world as we know it will be no more. Throughout history, there have been scattered attempts to unearth and speak the forbidden name. In the 3rd century, A sect in the deserts of Egypt claimed to have reconstructed it through visions and fasting. According to fragmented records, their leader vanished during a midnight ceremony, leaving only a circle of scorched sand where he had stood. Some historians dismiss this as allegory, but the location remains barren to this day, untouched by vegetation. The event became known among mystics as the night the desert listened. In medieval Spain, inquisitors reportedly intercepted a manuscript from North Africa containing what they believed was the complete name. The text was burned before it could be examined, but witnesses claimed to hear an unearthly sound as the parchment turned to ash, a deep, resonating hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls of the chamber. One chronicler noted that several guards resigned their posts in the days that followed, unable to sleep without hearing the sound again. More recently, in the late 19th century, a team of archaeologists excavating near the Dead Sea discovered a sealed clay jar containing a tightly rolled parchment. The outer layer bore the unmistakable script of the Book of Enoch, but the inner writing was unlike anything they had seen. Before it could be studied, the parchment inexplicably blackened and crumbled to dust upon exposure to light. The lead archaeologist, visibly shaken, refused to speak of the find for the rest of his life. These incidents share a haunting pattern. Whenever humanity edges close to uncovering the name, something intervenes, whether by chance, by design, or by divine will. The prophecy itself may be self-protecting, allowing glimpses but never the full truth, until the moment heaven has determined the world is ready, or perhaps when it is beyond saving. In the last century, several scholars have warned that the signs listed by Enoch may already be unfolding. Astronomers have recorded stars deviating slightly from their predicted paths, while satellite imagery has captured rivers that for brief periods appear to reverse their flow. These anomalies, though explained away as natural phenomena, match descriptions in the fragments almost word for word. To those who have studied the prophecy, it is as if the ancient warnings are quietly ticking off a list, moving the world closer to its appointed hour. In 2014, a lunar event stunned observers worldwide. A shadow swept across the moon in a way no eclipse could explain. The phenomenon lasted only minutes, but those who witnessed it described feeling an unnatural stillness in the air, followed by an unshakable sense of being watched. No official explanation satisfied the public, and for those familiar with Enoch's writings, it was a chilling echo of the shadow without eclipse he described thousands of years ago. Religious leaders who are aware of these parallels have taken drastically different approaches. Some urge silence, insisting that to speak openly of the prophecy risks accelerating its fulfillment. Others believe the opposite, that warning the world is a sacred duty, even if it means brushing dangerously close to revealing the forbidden name. This divide mirrors the ancient debate among the scribes who first chose to seal the chapter away. And yet, there is a growing sense that the choice may soon be out of human hands. If the prophecy is correct, the seal-bearer's identity will not be revealed through research or curiosity alone, but through an event so undeniable that no one, not even the most skeptical, will be able to ignore it. When that moment comes, the name will no longer be a secret. It will be a summons. The forbidden chapter describes that final moment in unnerving detail. Enoch writes of a day when the air will feel heavier than stone, and yet the birds will not take flight. In that stillness, a sound will ripple through the world, not carried by wind or voice, but resonating inside every living being. This sound, he says, will be the echo of the forbidden name, spoken in the heavenly courts and heard in the depths of the earth. It will not be announced to the masses. Rather, each soul will know instantly who has been summoned. The text suggests that this is not a name that can be learned in the ordinary sense. Even if one were to piece together the syllables from all surviving fragments, the true power would remain dormant, unless uttered under the exact conditions set by the Most High. It is the combination of time, place, and purpose that transforms it from mere sound into a divine command. And when that command is given, the seal-bearer will awaken to his final task. What makes this awakening so different from other apocalyptic prophecies is the absence of chaos at its start. There will be no earthquakes, no storms, no armies in the streets. Instead, the seal-bearer will simply begin moving toward a location that Enoch only calls the appointed gate. Once there, he will open it, and whatever lies beyond will not be closed again. The chapter gives no clear description of what this gate is, only that it was sealed before the first human drew breath. Some interpretations from ancient commentaries claim the gate leads to the final storehouse of divine judgment, a place where every unfulfilled word of prophecy is held until its time. When opened, these words will pour into the world like a flood, completing every warning God has ever spoken. In that moment, there will be no more delay, no more chance for repentance, and no turning back from the end. In the scorched Ethiopian manuscript, where the most complete version of the chapter was found, the text reaches a point where the ink itself appears burned into the parchment. This section begins to form the first syllables of the name before abruptly breaking off into a jagged tear, as if the page had been violently removed. Some scholars suggest the damage was accidental, but others believe it was deliberate, a final act to prevent the name from being preserved in full. Even so, the partial inscription has fueled decades of debate over its meaning. The surviving letters are unlike any standard alphabet, appearing more like intertwined symbols than individual characters. Linguists who have examined them describe an odd phenomenon. The longer one stares at the symbols, the more they seem to shift, as though rearranging themselves into something the mind struggles to comprehend. This visual instability has led some to speculate that the name cannot be read without also being heard, a sound that the written form only hints at. One apocryphal commentary claims that the name is composed of three parts, the first tied to creation, the second to judgment, and the third to finality. The seal-bearer, it says, embodies all three, the beginning, the weighing, and the end. This trinity of purpose makes him unlike any angel or man, for his role is not to redeem or to destroy selectively, but to close the book entirely. It is this completeness of authority that makes the name so feared. Enoch himself warns that even those who hear the name may not survive long enough to repeat it. He likens it to a blade that cuts both the one it strikes and the one who wields it. This is why the prophecy insists the name will only be spoken once at the exact moment the heavens decree. Until then, the fragments remain scattered, the mystery intact, but the chapter's closing words are clear. When it is spoken, you will know, for the world will no longer feel the same. The final portion of the surviving chapter shifts from description to warning. Enoch writes not as a recorder of visions, but as a man urgently pleading with whoever will read his words in the distant future. He speaks of a generation that will hunger for secrets more than for truth, and cautions that their obsession with unveiling the name will blind them to the signs unfolding around them. You will seek the syllables, he warns, but the seal-bearer will already walk among you, unseen. In one haunting passage, Enoch describes the seal-bearer standing at the edge of a great plain, silent, while the nations of the world gather in confusion. No one recognizes him. They speak of politics, of disasters, of war, never realizing the one who holds the end is already in their midst. Then Enoch writes, "His eyes will lift once, and the first shadow will fall across the earth." That shadow, the text says, will be the beginning of the 3 days in which history will be decided. Ancient commentaries differ on what these 3 days mean. Some take them as literal days, a brief but catastrophic countdown. Others believe they are symbolic, representing three global events that will unfold in rapid succession. But all agree on one thing: these days end with the utterance of the name, and once it is spoken, there will be no delay in the seal-bearer's mission. Whatever his task is, it will move like lightning to completion. The chapter's closing fragment is perhaps the most unsettling of all. It does not give the name, nor does it describe the seal-bearer's face. Instead, it leaves the reader with a single line: "And I awoke, and the sky was no longer blue." Whether this was symbolic or a literal detail from Enoch's vision, no one can say for certain. But it is the kind of ending that lingers, a suggestion that when the appointed time comes, the change will be absolute, and the world will know it instantly. Over the centuries, whispers of the forbidden chapter have crossed continents, slipping into the folklore of tribes, the hymns of hidden sects, and the private notes of scholars who dared not publish their findings. Each retelling alters details, but the core remains unchanged: a name, a being, and an ending. This persistence across cultures and eras suggests something deeper than myth. It feels less like a story being remembered and more like a memory that refuses to die, waiting for its appointed hour. In certain remote monasteries, elders still teach initiates about the seal-bearer, but only in riddles. They speak of a note that silences all music, a step that ends the road, and a gate that will never close once opened. These metaphors are meant to protect the listener from seeking too much, yet they carry an undercurrent of inevitability. The elders know that, when the time comes, no amount of ignorance will stop the prophecy from unfolding. Modern technology has only made the search more dangerous. Digitized manuscripts, AI translation, and cross-referencing of ancient languages have brought researchers closer than ever to reconstructing the name. Yet strangely, projects nearing completion often stall. Files vanish from servers, hard drives fail, or researchers withdraw abruptly, citing sudden illness or loss of interest. Some see this as coincidence. Others believe it is the same unseen force that erased letters from stone in the days of Brother Leontius. And so the forbidden chapter stands like a locked door, not forgotten, but deliberately avoided by those who understand the weight of its contents. We may live in an age that prides itself on uncovering every secret, but some truths are not waiting to be found. They are waiting for their moment. And when the name of the one who will end the world is finally spoken, the moment will arrive, whether we are ready or not. Enoch's prophecy leaves us with a paradox. The name is hidden to protect humanity, yet it is destined to be revealed. This means the act of concealment is not meant to prevent the end, only to delay it until the precise moment decreed by heaven. That moment, the text insists, will not come by accident. It will arrive as the last line in a story already written before the first dawn. And when it comes, no plea, no alliance, no act of power will alter the course that follows. The few who have dared to study the fragments to their conclusion often describe a strange shift in perspective, as if the prophecy itself is less about destruction and more about completion. The seal-bearer's task is not depicted as cruel or malicious, but as the final fulfillment of justice. This is perhaps why the chapter inspires both terror and awe. It does not present the end as chaos, but as the closing of a perfect though terrible design. In this light, the name becomes more than a word. It is the signal that every age, every war, every prayer, and every betrayal has been leading toward. Once it is heard, the chapter warns all illusions will fall away. The righteous will understand, the wicked will despair, and the seal-bearer will take the step that no one, not angel, not man, not demon, can undo. That is why the ancients feared even to whisper it. And so, the forbidden chapter remains sealed, its letters scattered, its power dormant for now. But the prophecy's final line is carved not in parchment, but in eternity. When the name is spoken, the end will not come to find you. It will already be here. Whether that moment is centuries away or closer than we think, one truth remains. When it happens, every living soul will know who has been named and why the world can never be the same again. If this revelation has stirred something deep within you, don't let it fade into the noise of everyday life. Subscribe now, turn on the notification bell, and stand with us as we uncover the truths they tried to erase. Your support, especially by becoming a channel member, helps us bring these hidden prophecies to light before the time runs out. The next chapter is already waiting, and you will want to be here when we open it.